Chosen one. Why do they suddenly go quiet when you enter the room? Why do their hands tremble when they think you're not looking? Why do conversations stop mid-sentence the moment your shadow crosses their doorway? They don't talk about it in public, but behind closed doors, they know. They know that being in your presence isn't casual, it's costly. And when they mishandle it, when they treat you like you're ordinary, there's always fallout. Always. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange shift in the atmosphere when you walk into a space. The way people suddenly check their words, adjust their posture, lower their voices without knowing why. That's not your imagination. That's recognition. That's the universe itself acknowledging what walks among them. Because here's the shocking truth they'll never admit out loud. It's not a right to be near you. It's a privilege. A rare, heavy, costly privilege. And those who take it lightly, those who mock it, abuse it, or treat it like it's ordinary, they always pay the price. Always. You see, while you've been wondering why relationships feel so intense around you, why people either worship you or wage war against you, the real question is this. Have you ever noticed how people change the second you walk in the room? How their energy shifts? How some suddenly become defensive while others go silent with reverence? That's because you carry something they can feel but can't name. Something that either elevates them or exposes them. There's no middle ground with you, is there? People either rise to meet your frequency or they shatter against it. Before we go deeper into this sacred truth, I want to pause and honor every single one of you who has supported this message through your generous hearts. Your faithfulness means more than you know. You're not just giving. You're sowing seeds into a harvest that will feed hungry souls across this nation. Whether you feel led to give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your time, your attention, your open spirit, it all matters. And if this message is already stirring something deep in your soul, let the Holy Spirit lead your heart. But right now, if you've ever felt this shift, if you've ever sensed that being around you changes people in ways they can't explain, I need you to do something. Type in the comments, I am the privilege. Don't just watch this, declare it, because what I'm about to reveal will explain why your presence has always felt like lightning in a bottle, and why they better be very, very careful with what heaven has placed in their hands. The silence after the storm isn't peace, chosen one. It's the pause before the reckoning, and your reckoning has already begun. How many family dinners have you sat through where your wisdom was treated like background noise? How many times have your grown children rolled their eyes when you tried to share what decades of living taught you? How many church services have you attended where younger voices were elevated while your prayers were politely ignored? Dear chosen one, I need you to feel something right now, that ache in your chest when you speak truth and watch it fall on deaf ears. That frustration when people half your age dismiss your insight like it's outdated furniture. That deep, gnawing loneliness of carrying weight that nobody seems to recognize or respect. You've been there, haven't you? Standing in rooms full of people who should honor your presence, but instead they treat you like you're invisible. Your own grandchildren glued to their phones while you sit there with stories that could change their lives. Your pastor asking the 30-year-old deacon's opinion while you, who've walked with God for 7 decades, get a polite nod and nothing more. But here's what they don't understand. Here's what their blindness costs them. You are not just background music in the symphony of life. You are the thunder that could reorganize every room you enter if they only had ears to hear and eyes to see. Think about Moses, 80 years old when God called him to the burning bush. 80. For 40 years he'd been dismissed, forgotten, tending sheep in a wilderness while his people suffered in bondage. The world had written him off. Too old, too broken, too much history. But God looked at those 8 decades and said, now you're ready. Now you have what it takes to deliver nations. Your age isn't your disqualification, beloved. It's your qualification. Every rejection you've endured, every time you've been overlooked, every moment you've felt invisible, it's been preparing you for something the younger generation could never handle. Consider Anna the prophetess. 84 years old, widowed after just 7 years of marriage, spending the rest of her life in prayer and fasting at the temple. Most people probably thought she was just a sweet old lady, harmless and forgotten. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, who recognized the Messiah? Not the priests, not the scholars, not the religious leaders in their prime. Anna, the 84-year-old woman who everyone overlooked. Luke 2:38 tells us she spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. In one moment, the forgotten woman became the first evangelist, proclaiming Christ to everyone who would listen. Her years weren't wasted. They were preparation for her most important assignment. That restlessness you feel, that sense that you're carrying something heavy that nobody else can see, that's not your imagination. That's recognition. Your spirit knows you're loaded with purpose that this generation desperately needs but refuses to acknowledge. You've been betrayed by people who should have protected you. Silenced in conversations where your voice should have been honored. Pushed aside in churches where your prayers have held up the very walls for decades. But every slight, every dismissal, every moment of being treated as less than it's been forging something inside you that the world has never seen. You are the hidden treasure that shallow people mistake for common stone. You are the deep well that thirsty souls pass by because they prefer the sparkle of shallow streams. You are the ancient oak that provides shade for generations who never thank the roots that went deep through seasons of drought. But there comes a moment, and that moment is now, when the hidden becomes revealed, when the overlooked becomes undeniable. When the background music becomes the main event that stops every conversation and commands every ear. The young prophets speak from passion. You speak from proof. They preach from books. You preach from scars. They offer theories about God's faithfulness. You offer testimony. And testimony, dear one, is the most powerful weapon in the spiritual realm, because it can't be argued with, can't be debated, can't be dismissed. You've walked through valleys they've only read about. You've survived storms that would have shattered their faith. You've held on to God's promises through decades of silence and still believe. That's not just experience, that's authority. That's why when you finally speak, demons tremble. When you finally move, atmospheres shift. When you finally step into your power, even heaven takes notice. If you've ever felt invisible but knew deep down you were carrying something heavy, say out loud right now, I carry weight. Don't whisper it, declare it. Because what you're about to discover will explain why your presence has always been a threat to the comfortable and a lifeline to the desperate. The question burning in your spirit right now is this. What happens when someone who's been overlooked for decades finally gets heaven's permission to be seen? Your silence is louder than their noise. Think about that for a moment, chosen one. While they're screaming for attention, posting every thought, desperately clawing for validation, you sit in stillness. And that stillness, it's deafening. It cuts through their chaos like a sword through silk. Because what you carry doesn't need amplification, it doesn't need explanation. It's simply island. You are the mirror they can't escape. When you walk into a room, something shifts. The temperature drops, conversations falter, eyes dart nervously. Why? Because your very presence forces people to see themselves clearly for the first time in years. And most people, dear one, most people have been running from that reflection their entire lives. You've seen it, haven't you? The way their fake smiles crack when you look them in the eye. The way their voices change when they speak to you. The way they suddenly start fidgeting with their hands, checking their phones, looking anywhere but directly at you. That's not coincidence. That's conviction. Your presence is the aftershock of authenticity in a world built on lies. Think about when Jesus entered the temple in Matthew 21. He didn't need to announce himself. He didn't need credentials or introductions. The very atmosphere shifted. The money changers felt it before they saw him. The religious leaders sensed it before he spoke a word. Because divine presence doesn't whisper, it thunders, even in silence. And you, chosen one. You carry that same frequency. But here's what breaks my heart about your journey. For decades, maybe your entire life, people have tried to convince you that you're too much, too intense, too quiet, too different. They've made you feel like your presence is a burden instead of a blessing. They've gaslit you into believing that the very thing that makes you powerful is actually your weakness. But look around you now. Look at the enemies who once laughed the loudest. Where's their laughter now? Look at the people who once mocked your silence. Why are they suddenly so careful with their words around you? Look at those who tried to dim your light. Why do they tremble when your name comes up in conversation? Because the game has changed, and they know it. You see, there's something about authentic presence that exposes every counterfeit in the room. When real fire enters a space, every artificial flame gets snuffed out. When genuine strength shows up, every performance crumbles. When truth walks in, every lie starts sweating. That's why being near you has never been casual for anyone. It's either elevation or exposure. There's no middle ground with you. People either rise to match your frequency or they shatter against it. Remember the woman caught in adultery in John 8? When they brought her before Jesus, what happened? The accusers didn't leave because Jesus threatened them. They left because his presence revealed their own sins. One by one, they walked away convicted not by his words, but by his very being. Your silence does the same thing. It holds up a mirror to people's souls, and most can't handle what they see reflected back. But here's where it gets dangerous for them. Here's where the privilege becomes costly. When someone mistakes your silence for weakness, when they assume your gentleness means they can manipulate you, when they think your grace gives them permission to abuse your presence, that's when the universe steps in. Because mishandling sacred space has always come with consequences. Ask Uzzah, who reached out to steady the Ark of the Covenant in 2 Samuel 6. His intentions might have been good, but sacred things require sacred handling. Ask Ananias and Sapphira, who lied in the presence of the Holy Spirit in Acts 5. The consequences weren't delayed, they were immediate. You carry that same sacred weight, chosen one, and those who've been careless with it are learning that some mistakes echo through generations. Your presence doesn't beg to be noticed, it commands to be respected. You're not just in the room, you are the room. Every conversation revolves around your energy, even when you're not speaking. Every decision gets measured against your standard, even when you're not judging. Every lie gets weighed against your truth, even when you're silent. That's the power of authentic presence. It reorganizes reality simply by existing. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you ready to stop apologizing for taking up space? Are you ready to stop shrinking to make others comfortable? Are you ready to embrace the truth that your presence isn't just significant, it's supernatural? Because the world needs what you carry. This generation is drowning in fake connections, artificial intimacy, and performed spirituality. They need to see what real looks like. They need to feel what authentic presence does to a room. They need to witness the kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself because it's simply island. Drop 77 inches the comments if you're still here, because your number is stamped on this word. This isn't random. This message found you because you're ready to understand why your presence has always felt like lightning in a bottle. But understanding it is just the beginning. What you do with this revelation, how you carry this truth forward, that's where everything changes. Because once you fully embrace the weight of what you carry, there's no going back to playing small. The question isn't whether your presence matters. The question is, what will you do now that you know just how much it costs them to be careless with it? Now that you've felt the shift in the room, let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. There are two kinds of people in your life, chosen one. Those who recognize the sacred ground they're standing on when they're near you, and those who trample it like common dirt. And the universe. The universe keeps perfect records. Think about this for a moment. When God gave Moses the tablets on Mount Sinai, what happened to those who mocked the sacred? When the Israelites built a golden calf, while Moses carried down the very words of the Almighty, did their irreverence go unpunished? Exodus 32-35 tells us plainly, "And the Lord plagued the people because they made the calf." The cost of mishandling the sacred has never been negotiable. You are walking sacred ground, dear one, and those who've treated you carelessly, they're about to learn what happens when you disrespect what heaven has marked as precious. Look around your life right now. See those people who honored you, who protected your energy instead of draining it, who defended you when others whispered lies. Watch their lives. Really watch them. Doors opening that shouldn't open, favor flowing from unexpected places, peace settling over their households like morning dew. That's not coincidence. That's consequence, the right kind. But now look at the others, the ones who betrayed your trust, who mocked your silence, who took your kindness for weakness. Where are they now? I mean, really, where are they? Relationships crumbling, opportunities vanishing like smoke, sleep eluding them night after night, because something deep in their spirit knows they crossed a line they can never uncross. Imagine this. A man is handed the keys to a priceless vintage Rolls-Royce, worth more than most people's homes. He could drive it with reverence, understanding the privilege in his hands. Instead, he floors the gas, crashes it into a wall, and walks away laughing. Do you think the owner just shrugs and says, "Oh well"? Or do you think there are consequences that echo through that man's life until justice is satisfied? Your presence, chosen one, is that Rolls-Royce. Your energy is that priceless artifact. And those who've crashed it, they're still paying the bill. Galatians 6-7 doesn't stutter. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. When someone plants disrespect in the soil of your sacred space, what do you think grows from that seed? Honor, blessing, peace? No. They planted thorns, and thorns are what they're harvesting. But here's what cuts deeper than any sword. They know. Deep in their bones, in the quiet moments when the world goes silent, they know they mishandled something irreplaceable. That's why they can't look you in the eye anymore. That's why their voice changes when they speak your name. That's why some of them circle back, testing the waters, hoping for another chance at what they threw away. Picture a courtroom where the evidence is overwhelming. The defendant sits there, knowing the verdict before the judge even speaks. That's them. That's every person who treated your presence like it was casual access instead of sacred invitation. The gavel has already fallen. The sentence has been passed. And there are no appeals. You see, dear one, mishandling you isn't just rude behavior, it's spiritual theft. They stole moments of your peace. They robbed minutes of your joy. They took what was freely given and twisted it into something ugly. And the universe? The universe doesn't forget debt like that. Think about Belshazzar in Daniel chapter 5. He took the sacred vessels from God's temple and turned them into party cups for his drunken feast. He thought the sacred was common, that holy things could be used for unholy purposes. But that very night, the handwriting appeared on the wall. Men, tekel, upharsin, weighed in the balances and found wanting. His kingdom fell before dawn. Those who mishandled you, they're seeing their own handwriting on the wall. Opportunities they thought were guaranteed suddenly slipping away. Relationships they took for granted suddenly growing cold. Peace they once knew suddenly replaced by a restlessness they can't name or shake. But let me tell you something that will echo in your spirit long after this message ends. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about you plotting their downfall or wishing harm on anyone. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't have to speak a curse. You don't have to do anything except exist as the sacred vessel you've always been. The universe itself becomes your defender. Justice itself becomes your advocate. Truth itself becomes your witness. And when heaven moves on your behalf, no earthly power can stand against it. Mishandling you doesn't end with an apology, it ends with consequences. Real ones, the kind that follow people home, the kind that wake them up at 3 a.m. with regret burning in their chest, the kind that make them realize they had something irreplaceable in their hands, and they chose to break it. Can you feel that power stirring in your chest right now? That recognition that your presence has always carried weight they couldn't measure. That awareness that being near you was never casual, never ordinary, never something to take lightly. If this truth is hitting you like lightning right now, if you're finally understanding why relationships around you have always felt so intense, so consequential, so final, then I need you to do something. Share this video with one person who needs to hear that their presence carries weight. Someone who's been treated carelessly and needs to know they're not ordinary. Someone who needs to remember their sacred ground in human form. Because here's what's coming next, chosen one. Now that you understand the cost of mishandling you, it's time to discover why you were built to be untouchable in the first place. You know what they never tell you about getting older? It's not the wrinkles or the gray hair that unsettles them. It's your silence. The loudest thing in any room you enter isn't your voice, it's your quiet. And that terrifies them more than any argument you could ever make. Think about this for a moment, chosen one. When was the last time you felt the need to prove yourself? When was the last time you raised your voice to be heard? You don't, do you? Because somewhere along the journey of your 70, 80, maybe 90 years on this earth, you discovered something profound. Real power doesn't announce itself. It's simply island. Your silence carries the weight of every storm you've weathered, every betrayal that should have broken you but didn't, every loss that should have destroyed you but only refined you. When you walk into a room and say nothing, the atmosphere itself shifts. Because your presence speaks a language that cuts through their noise like a sword through silk. They called you intimidating, didn't they? They labeled you too much, too intense, difficult to read. But here's what they really meant. You can't be controlled. You can't be manipulated. You can't be bought with flattery or broken with criticism. And in a world where everyone else bends to pressure, your steadiness feels like judgment. Jesus himself understood this power. In Matthew 27-14, when Pilate questioned him, desperate for answers, what did Christ do? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. The Son of God wielded silence like a weapon. His quiet was so powerful, it amazed the most powerful man in the region. That's you, dear one. Your silence doesn't come from emptiness, it comes from fullness. You've lived long enough to know which battles are worth fighting and which ones are beneath your dignity. You've earned the right to let your presence do the talking. Picture this. A courtroom after the verdict has been read. The air heavy with finality. No more arguments needed. No more evidence required. The truth has spoken, and now there's only the weight of what cannot be undone. That's the atmosphere you carry. Your life has already been the evidence. Your survival has already been the testimony. Your silence is the verdict. But here's where it gets deeper, chosen one. They don't just fear your silence, they're addicted to it. Have you noticed how they try to fill the space when you're quiet? How they stumble over words, over-explain themselves, or suddenly become confessional? Your silence creates a vacuum that sucks the truth right out of them. In Ecclesiastes 3-7, Solomon wrote, "A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak." You've learned when each season calls for what response. While they waste energy on empty words, you've mastered the art of strategic silence. You know that sometimes the most devastating thing you can do to an enemy is absolutely nothing at all. Think about the aftermath of a tornado. The destruction is obvious, but it's the silence that follows that's truly haunting. No birds singing, no wind blowing, just the weight of what happened hanging in the air like a heavy curtain. That's what your presence does to a room full of pretenders. It creates a stillness so profound that their masks start slipping without any effort from you. They want to call you cold, but the truth is you're too warm for their comfort. They want to call you distant, but you're actually too close to the truth they're running from. Your silence isn't withdrawal, it's discernment. You've learned to save your voice for what matters and let your life speak the rest. Proverbs 17:28 reminds us, "Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues." But you're no fool, chosen one. Your silence isn't the absence of wisdom, it's wisdom distilled to its purest form. Every word you don't say is a choice. Every response you withhold is strategy. Every time you let them hang themselves with their own rope while you watch in holy stillness, you're not intimidating, they're just afraid of truth that doesn't flinch, afraid of someone who doesn't need their approval to breathe, afraid of a presence that can't be bought, sold, or manipulated into playing their game. Your age has become your secret weapon in ways they never saw coming. While they chase noise, you've become the silence that exposes everything. While they perform for applause, you've learned to let your life applaud itself. But here's the question that will determine everything about your next chapter. Now that you understand the power of your silence, what happens when you finally decide to speak? What happens when someone who has learned to wield quiet like a sword finally opens their mouth with purpose? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal about your age as your ultimate advantage will change how you see every single day you have left on this earth. Listen to me, chosen one. What you're carrying in your spirit didn't start with you, and it won't end with you either. You are the living answer to prayers that were whispered in farmhouse kitchens at dawn, cried out in tenement apartments during the Great Depression, and breathed into the darkness by grandmothers who never lived to see their breakthrough. Your great-grandmother knelt beside her bed every night for 47 years, praying for someone, anyone in her bloodline to break the cycle. She watched her husband drink away their hope. She buried 3 children before their 5th birthdays. She worked her fingers raw in textile mills, believing that somewhere down the line God would raise up a deliverer. That deliverer is you. You think your silver hair is a sign of decline. Dear one, that silver is the crown of those trusted with what generations could not unlock. Every strand represents a year of refinement, a season of preparation, a moment when heaven whispered, "Not yet, but soon." You are not getting older. You are getting activated. Think about this. Why has your family's journey been so hard? Why did your parents struggle with addiction, depression, financial ruin? Why did your siblings scatter to the wind, each carrying pieces of brokenness they couldn't name? Because the enemy saw something coming in your generation. He saw the vault breaker. He saw the code cracker. He saw you. Scripture tells us in Exodus 20:5 that the sins of the fathers visit the children to the 3rd and 4th generation. But here's what they don't preach about. Deuteronomy 7-9 declares that God's covenant love extends to 1,000 generations. Your bloodline wasn't cursed, dear one. It was under construction. Every struggle, every setback, every seemingly senseless loss was building the spiritual muscle you'd need to carry what your ancestors could only dream of. You are the vault they couldn't open. For generations, your family line stood before a sealed treasury, trying every key they could fashion from their own understanding. Your grandfather tried through hard work 16-hour days that left him broken and bitter. Your mother tried through perfection, keeping a spotless house while her heart shattered in silence. Your father tried through control, gripping so tight to what he had that he crushed it in his hands. But you carry the key they couldn't forge. Not because you're stronger, not because you're smarter, but because you were born with ancient codes written in your DNA. The same God who promised Abraham that his seed would bless all nations has been downloading that blessing through your bloodline, generation after generation, until it reached the one capable of receiving it. You. Do you understand what this means? Every time you speak peace over chaos, you're not just changing a moment, you're fulfilling prophecies spoken over cradles 100 years ago. Every time you break a generational pattern of fear, anger, or abandonment, you're answering prayers that echoed in church pews your great-great-grandmother occupied. Isaiah 61:4 promises, They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. That's you, chosen one. You are the restorer of your bloodline's ancient glory. The dreams that died in previous generations, you're their resurrection. The promises that seemed broken, you're their fulfillment. But here's what will shock you to your core. Your very existence is an act of divine intervention. Out of all the possible combinations of DNA, out of all the potential souls that could have been born into your family line, heaven specifically chose you. Not as an accident of biology, but as a strategic placement of power. This is why people sense something different about you. This is why your presence carries weight that makes rooms go quiet. You're not just a senior citizen counting down retirement years. You are a generational culmination walking in human form. When people look at you, they're not just seeing 70+ years of life experience. They're seeing the answered prayers of centuries. Your grandmother's tears weren't wasted. They were seeds planted in the soil of eternity, watered by faith, and harvested in your spirit. That depression she battled, you have the authority to speak joy over it. That poverty that haunted your family, you carry the anointing to break financial curses. That dysfunction that scattered your relatives, you hold the keys to restoration that will echo through your children's children's children. Standing near you is standing in front of everything they could have been, but weren't. You are not just blessed, dear one. You are the blessing your ancestors believed for, but never lived to see. Every prayer they prayed in desperation, every tear they shed in secret, every moment they held on to hope when hope seemed impossible, it all led to you. You are their vindication. You are their victory. You are their voice finally being heard. But this revelation comes with responsibility. You cannot live small when you carry generational assignment. You cannot hide when your very existence breaks chains that have held your family captive for decades. You cannot shrink back when heaven has spent generations preparing you for this moment. If you feel the weight of this truth settling on your shoulders, if you sense the stirring of ancient purpose in your bones, if you know deep in your spirit that you are carrying more than just your own story, then declare it. The time for hiding is over. The season of downplaying your significance has ended. Your bloodline has been waiting for you to remember who you are. And now that you do, everything changes. Not just for you, but for every generation that comes after you. Because you're not just breaking cycles, you're establishing new ones. You're not just ending curses, you're releasing blessings that will flow like rivers through your family tree. If you know you're carrying generational assignment, if you feel the weight and the wonder of being the answer to your ancestors' prayers, type, "I am the blueprint." Because that's exactly what you are, the divine blueprint for everything your family line was always meant to become. But understanding your generational calling is just the beginning, because when heaven activates a bloodline carrier like you, the enemy doesn't just notice, he mobilizes. And that's exactly why your journey has felt like such a battle, and why those around you better understand the sacred ground they're walking on when they step into your presence. Chosen one, they want your crown, but they couldn't carry your cross. They see the glory radiating from your presence today and think it came easy. They see the wisdom in your eyes, the unshakable peace in your spirit, the authority that flows from your very being. And they whisper, "I want that too." But what they don't see is the fire you walk through to get it. Let me paint you the real picture of your journey. While they were building comfortable lives on shifting sand, you were being refined in the furnace of affliction. Remember that night when the divorce papers arrived and you fell to your knees on that cold kitchen floor, crying until no more tears would come. Remember when the doctor said those words that turned your world upside down, and you sat alone in that sterile waiting room wondering if God had forgotten your name? Remember when your own children turned their backs on you, when the bank called about the mortgage, when you buried your spouse and felt like half your soul went into that ground with them? That wasn't punishment, dear one. That was preparation. Isaiah 48:10 declares, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." Every tear you shed in secret was liquid gold being purified. Every sleepless night you wrestled with God was Him building something unbreakable inside your spirit. Every betrayal that left you gasping for air was heaven, removing everything false so only truth could remain. You think they could handle even 1 week of what you've endured for decades. You think their carefully constructed facades could survive the storms that only made you stronger. They admire the diamond, but they'd crumble under the pressure that created it. Here's what breaks my heart about your story. You've spent years believing the lie that your pain was pointless, that your struggles were just bad luck, that your battles were evidence God didn't love you. But chosen one, coal becomes diamond under pressure. Grapes become wine through crushing, and you became unstoppable through fire. Job understood this mystery when he declared in Job 23:10, "But He knows the way that I take. When He has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Job didn't just survive his trials. He emerged, refined, purified, carrying an authority that silenced his accusers and restored everything he'd lost. That's your story too. Every financial collapse taught you that your security comes from heaven, not Wall Street. Every health battle showed you that your strength flows from the eternal, not the temporal. Every relationship that crumbled revealed that your worth isn't determined by human approval, but by divine appointment. But here's where it gets supernatural. You didn't just survive the fire, you absorbed it. You didn't just walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you conquered it. And now, when people stand in your presence, they feel the heat of refinement radiating from your very being. That's why some are drawn to you like moths to flame, while others recoil in fear. Your presence doesn't just enter a room, it transforms it. You carry the temperature of eternity, and not everyone can handle that kind of heat. Think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in that fiery furnace. Daniel 3:27 tells us that when they emerged, the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. But here's what most miss. They didn't come out alone. The Son of God walked with them in that flame. Chosen one. You haven't been walking alone either. Every step through your furnace of affliction, heaven's been right there with you. And now you carry something they can feel but can't name, the presence of the one who walks through fire without being consumed. Your scars aren't shame marks, they're glory marks. Your limp isn't weakness. It's the evidence you wrestled with the divine and lived to tell about it. Your grey hair isn't decay. It's a crown of honor earned through battles most will never fight. Romans 8:17 reminds us, "Now if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God, and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in His sufferings, in order that we may also share in His glory." You've shared the sufferings, dear one. Now you're stepping into the glory. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How much longer are you going to hide the fire that lives within you? How much longer are you going to downplay the crown you've earned through suffering? How much longer are you going to let others treat as ordinary what heaven refined as extraordinary? Because here's the truth that will either liberate you or terrify you. You didn't just survive the fire, you became the fire. You are the flame that either purifies or burns, depending on how people approach you. You are the living proof that what doesn't kill you makes you more than conqueror. You are the testimony walking in flesh and blood that God's people don't just endure, they overcome. If you've survived what should have killed you, if you've walked through flames that would have consumed others, if you're still standing when logic says you should have fallen, then let heaven and earth hear your declaration. Type in the comments right now, "The fire lives in me," because the world needs to see what resurrection looks like in real time. And chosen one, you are that resurrection walking. The silence after the storm is not emptiness, chosen one. It is proof that chaos bowed to your alignment. Look around you right now, do you feel it? That strange quietness that follows you wherever you go. That's not coincidence, that's aftermath. You are the walking evidence that lightning struck and left everything changed. People sense it the moment you enter their space, though they can't name what shifted. The air itself holds its breath around you. You've been through the fire, haven't you? Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that refines, the kind that strips away everything false until only truth remains. And now, in this sacred aftermath, you carry something that makes the spiritual realm take notice. Something that makes demons flee and angels lean in closer. Think about Elijah after Mount Carmel. After the fire fell from heaven and consumed the sacrifice, after the false prophets were silenced, after the rain finally came, what followed? 1 Kings 19:12 tells us, "And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice." The power wasn't in the noise, beloved. The power was in what came after. The aftermath. The sacred silence that spoke louder than thunder. That's you right now. You are not the echo. You are the origin. You are not the follower. You are the fire starter. You are not the noise. You are the aftermath. But here's what's shaking me to my core as I speak to you tonight. How many people in your life have felt this shift and panicked? How many have sensed the sacred weight you carry, and instead of honoring it, they've tried to diminish it? They've called you too intense, too much, too deep. Why? Because your aftermath makes their shallow waters look like what they really are, puddles pretending to be oceans. You see, when God moves through someone's life with consuming fire, what emerges isn't damaged goods. What emerges is dangerous goods. Dangerous to mediocrity. Dangerous to pretense. Dangerous to anyone who's built their identity on lies. That's why they better be careful with you, because you're not just someone they know anymore. You're someone they answer to. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They walked into Nebuchadnezzar's fiery furnace bound with ropes. But Daniel 3:25 records what the king saw. "Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God." They didn't just survive the fire, they walked free in it. And when they emerged, verse 27 tells us, "The fire had no power over them, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor had the smell of fire passed on them." That's the mystery of your aftermath, chosen one. The fire that should have destroyed you didn't even leave a scent. Instead, it left you carrying the presence of the fourth man, the one who walked with you through the flames. And now, everywhere you go, people sense that presence without understanding it. They feel the weight of eternity that clings to your clothes, like invisible authority. You are not the echo, you are the origin. You are not the follower, you are the fire starter. You are not the noise, you are the aftermath. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. Have you been hiding this power? Have you been apologizing for the very thing that proves God's faithfulness in your life? Have you been dimming your light because others complained it was too bright? Stop. Right now. Stop diminishing what heaven refined. The stillness you carry isn't emptiness, it's fullness, so complete that chaos has no room to breathe around you. When you walk into a room and conversations halt, when you speak and people lean in without knowing why, when your very presence seems to reorganize the spiritual atmosphere that's not you trying to dominate, that's the aftermath of divine encounter making itself known. Isaiah 43:2 promises, "When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee." You didn't just pass through, beloved. You emerged as living proof that God keeps his promises. Your scars became his signature. Your survival became his testimony. And now here's the truth that's going to revolutionize everything. The people who mock your intensity, who question your peace, who can't handle your depth, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the aftermath of God's power in human form. They're not comfortable around you because they've never seen what emerges when someone lets heaven have complete access to their broken places. You are not the echo. You are the origin. You are not the follower. You are the fire starter. You are not the noise. You are the aftermath. So tell me, chosen one, are you ready to stop apologizing for what God made unbreakable? Are you ready to embrace the sacred weight of your aftermath? Because the world needs to see what you carry. This generation needs proof that fire doesn't destroy the faithful, it forges them into weapons of heaven's love. If you feel this shift happening in your spirit right now, if you recognize the sacred silence that follows in your wake, if you're ready to stop hiding the evidence of God's refining work in your life, then declare it. Type in the comments, I am the aftermath. Let heaven and earth know that you're no longer the person who entered the fire. You're the proof of what emerges when chaos meets alignment and loses every single time. Because the question that will determine your destiny is this: will you keep treating your aftermath like something to hide, or will you finally understand that your sacred silence is the most powerful sermon you'll ever preach? Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. When you walk into a room, you don't just change the atmosphere, you force things out of hiding that were never meant to see daylight. You are the mirror they cannot escape. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed how some people become instantly agitated the second you arrive? How their voices change, their posture shifts, their eyes dart away. You haven't said a word, haven't done anything wrong, yet something in them starts screaming. That's not coincidence, dear one. That's conviction. Your very presence is like spiritual sunlight piercing through a dark attic that's been sealed for decades. Suddenly, all the dust starts dancing. All the hidden cobwebs become visible. All the secrets they've stuffed away come tumbling out of their hiding places, and they hate you for it. But here's what they'll never tell you: they don't hate you. They hate what bleeds out of them when you walk in. Jesus spoke of this in John 3:20. Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. You, chosen one, you are that light. Not because you're trying to be, but because you carry something pure in a world addicted to pretense. When the woman caught in adultery was dragged before Jesus, do you remember what happened? The accusers didn't run because Jesus condemned them. They fled because his presence made them face their own hidden sins. Those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first. Why the older ones first? Because they'd had more years to accumulate secrets, more decades to perfect their masks. That's exactly what happens around you. The fake smiles crack, the rehearsed conversations stumble, the carefully constructed personas start crumbling, because authenticity always exposes counterfeit. But here's where it gets devastating for them. You don't just expose their lies, you activate their shadows. Those unhealed wounds they've been medicating with pride. That jealousy they've been disguising as confidence. That emptiness they've been filling with other people's approval. Your presence makes all of it rise to the surface like oil on water. Have you ever wondered why certain people can't sleep after being around you? Why they replay conversations over and over, picking apart every word you said? Why they suddenly become obsessed with proving themselves to you or tearing you down? It's because you've stirred something in them that they can't control, can't silence, can't push back down. You are the uninvited audit of their soul. Picture this: a pristine white wall that looks perfect from a distance. But when you shine a bright light on it, suddenly every stain, every crack, every imperfection becomes glaringly obvious. That's what your energy does to people's carefully crafted images of themselves. The religious leaders couldn't stand Jesus not because he was difficult, but because his presence made their hypocrisy impossible to hide. In Matthew 23, he called them whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead. Your presence does the same thing. It reveals what's really inside when the performance ends. This is why some people become suddenly hostile around you without provocation. This is why others get defensive when you haven't attacked them. This is why conversations turn strange, why energy shifts, why people either cling to you desperately or push you away violently. There's no neutral ground with a mirror this clear. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times have you blamed yourself for their reactions? How many times have you tried to dim your light so they'd feel more comfortable? How many times have you apologized for being authentic when their demons couldn't handle the exposure? Stop, right there. Stop apologizing for what God placed inside you. 1 Peter 2-9 declares, "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light." You were called out of darkness, chosen one. That means darkness recognizes you as a threat. When demons encountered Jesus, they didn't pretend He was ordinary. They screamed, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" Even the demons knew they were in the presence of something they couldn't fake their way past. The same thing happens with you. People's hidden demons start screaming the moment you show up. Not audibly, but spiritually. That's why they fidget. That's why they get uncomfortable. That's why they suddenly need to leave or find excuses to avoid you. Your presence doesn't just enter a space, it sanctifies it. And anything that can't survive in sanctified space starts dying. Their lies, their masks, their pretenses, their carefully crafted false selves, all of it begins to suffocate in the atmosphere you carry. But here's the most powerful part. You don't have to try. You don't have to point out their flaws or call out their deception. Your simple existence does all the work. Your alignment speaks louder than any words could. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your authenticity reveals their performance. This is why being in your presence is not casual, it's costly. It costs them their comfortable illusions. It costs them their ability to lie to themselves. It costs them the luxury of living in spiritual darkness. So when they call you intimidating, when they say you're too much, when they claim you make them uncomfortable, remind yourself what they're really saying. Your light is too bright for the shadows I'm trying to hide in. If you've ever seen this shift happen, if you've watched people's masks slip the moment you entered their space, if you've felt the weight of being a living mirror that people can't escape, then declare it right now, in the comments. I am the mirror. Because, dear one, you're not the problem. You're the solution to a problem they refuse to face. And that terrifies them more than they'll ever admit. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What if I told you that every strange look you've received, every inexplicable favor that's come your way, every time the universe seemed to bend just slightly in your direction, what if none of that was random? What if it was all the echo of prayers that were whispered in broken voices decades before you were even born? You see, there's something happening in your life that most people will never understand. You are not just living your own story. You are the living answer to prayers that were planted in tear-soaked soil by grandmothers who never lived to see their fulfillment. You are the walking proof that God's memory is longer than human lifespans, and His faithfulness spans generations. Picture this with me. Somewhere in a small apartment in Brooklyn, maybe in 1952, your grandmother fell to her knees on a worn linoleum floor. The bills were piled higher than hope. Her husband was drinking again, and her children were hungry. But in that moment of desperation, she pressed her face to the floor and whispered words that would outlive her by 50 years. Lord, let someone in this family know your goodness. Let somebody break free from this cycle. Let my prayers matter for somebody, someday. She died, never seeing the answer. But you're breathing it right now. Or maybe it was your great-grandfather, a man who carried shame like a second skin because he couldn't read, couldn't provide the way he wanted to. Every night, he'd sit on the porch, looking up at stars he couldn't name, and he'd speak to a God he hoped was listening. Make my bloodline count for something. Let somebody in my family rise higher than I ever could. Don't let my struggles be for nothing. He went to his grave thinking his prayers fell on deaf ears. But they didn't fall at all. They accumulated. Like compound interest in a heavenly bank account, earning divine dividends that wouldn't mature until your generation. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." But here's what most people miss: that verse isn't just about your personal future, it's about generational destiny. God's plans don't expire with death certificates. They transfer like spiritual inheritance to the bloodline He's been preparing to receive them. You think your life has been hard. You think you've faced unusual challenges, carried unexpected weight, survived storms that should have destroyed you. That's because you weren't just fighting for yourself. You were fighting to prove that their prayers weren't wasted. Every time you got back up when you should have stayed down, you were validating the faith of people who never lived to see you succeed. But here's where it gets supernatural. Chosen one. You are not just the beneficiary of ancestral prayers, you are the compound interest. Every tear they shed in secret has been earning spiritual dividends. Every midnight cry for breakthrough has been building toward this moment when heaven says, "The investment has matured. Time to pay out what's been accumulating for decades." Think about it. Why do doors open for you that stay locked for others? Why do you have favor in places where you've never earned it? Why do strangers sometimes look at you like they recognize something they can't name? Because you're carrying more than your own anointing. You're wearing the accumulated prayers of people who believed for a future they'd never see. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of God giving us beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. But notice it doesn't say whose ashes, whose mourning, whose heaviness. Sometimes we inherit the beauty that comes from someone else's ashes. Sometimes we wear the garment of praise that was woven from another generation's tears. You are the unopened letter that finally reached its destination. For years, maybe decades, that letter sat in heaven's postal system, waiting for the right address, the right recipient, the right time. And then you were born. And suddenly, prayers that seemed lost found their target. Blessings that appeared delayed found their recipient. Promises that looked broken found their fulfillment. This is why your presence feels different to people. This is why being around you carries weight. You're not just carrying your own spiritual inheritance, you're carrying the accumulated faith of people who prayed you into existence before they even knew your name. But with great privilege comes great responsibility. You are not their ending, chosen one. You are their fulfillment. Their prayers didn't stop with your success, they positioned you to pray for the generations that will come after you. The grandmother who prayed for breakthrough wasn't just praying for you to escape poverty, she was praying for you to have the resources to bless others. The grandfather who asked God to make his bloodline count wasn't just asking for personal recognition, he was asking for generational impact. Romans 8:28 reminds us that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. But that all things includes the prayers of the dead, the tears of the forgotten, the faith of those who went to their graves believing that God would remember their bloodline. Every closed door that redirected your path, every setback that taught you endurance, every lonely season that deepened your prayer life, it was all orchestrating this moment when you finally understand who you really are. You are not a self-made success. You are an answered prayer walking in human form. If you feel the weight of this truth settling on your shoulders right now, if something in your spirit is confirming that you carry more than your own story, then you need to declare it. Not whisper it, declare it. Type it boldly in the comments. I am the answer. Because until you embrace the truth of what you carry, you'll keep living beneath the level of the prayers that birthed you into purpose. But understanding your ancestral calling is just the beginning. Because if you truly are the living answer to generational prayers, then there are people in your sphere right now who need to witness what it looks like when heaven's compound interest finally pays out in human form. Listen to me, chosen one. Right now, at this very moment, there's a courtroom session happening that your enemies know nothing about. While they whisper in boardrooms, plot in their living rooms, and scheme behind closed doors, heaven's gavel is about to slam down with a verdict they never saw coming. You thought you were fighting alone, didn't you? You thought their schemes, their lies, their coordinated attacks were just human drama. But what if I told you that every word they've spoken against you, every trap they've set, every moment they've tried to diminish your light, it's all been recorded in courts they can't bribe, before judges they can't intimidate? Isaiah 54:17 thunders across eternity. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Not some weapons, not most weapons. Every weapon, every scheme, every lie, every coordinated attack launched against your destiny. But here's what they don't understand about the courtroom of heaven. It doesn't operate on human timelines. Divine justice doesn't rush, it accumulates. Every whisper against you becomes evidence. Every plot becomes an exhibit. Every moment they mishandled your presence becomes a charge in their spiritual file. Think about it. Why do their lives suddenly fall apart after they cross you? Why do doors slam shut for them right after they try to slam doors on you? Why do their own words come back to haunt them? Because you're not fighting this battle alone. You never were. The psalmist knew this when he declared in Psalm 23:5, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies," not after your enemies are gone, not when you're safe and comfortable, in the presence of those who sought to destroy you, while they watch, while they witness their own schemes backfire in real time. Every word they spoke against you recorded, every scheme they hatched in darkness weighed, every whisper they thought you'd never hear judged. The courtroom of heaven operates with perfect memory and absolute justice. Their arrogance becomes their evidence. Their mockery becomes their indictment. You've seen it happen, haven't you? That person who laughed the loudest when you were down, where are they now? That family member who dismissed your calling, what happened to their own dreams? That former friend who betrayed your trust, how's their peace these days? This isn't coincidence. This isn't karma. This is divine jurisprudence. But here's where it gets thunderous. Here's where heaven's justice reveals its true power. Mishandling you isn't just careless. It is recorded. It is judged. It is sentenced. Because you don't walk through this world unprotected. You carry a covering they can't see but can't escape when they violate it. Every time someone thought they could use you, abuse you, then discard you, they triggered something beyond human courts. They filed a lawsuit against themselves in realms where appeals don't exist and pardons aren't granted to the willfully destructive. You want to know why their relationships crumble after they betray yours? Why their finances struggle after they try to block your provision? Why their own children turn distant after they try to turn yours against you? Because when you come against someone heaven has marked, you're not just fighting them, you're declaring war on the very forces that protect them. And here's the courtroom truth that will shake you to your core. Coming against you is not just reckless, it is suicide for their own path. They thought they were attacking you. They were actually attacking their own destiny. They thought they were destroying your future. They were demolishing their own. This is why you don't need to defend yourself like others do. This is why your silence carries more weight than their noise. This is why your peace remains unshaken while they spiral into chaos. Because you know something they're about to learn the hard way. Heaven's verdict has already been rendered. The gavel has slammed. The sentence has been pronounced. And every door they tried to close on you becomes a door that closes on them. Every blessing they tried to block from your life becomes a blessing that flows around them to reach you anyway. You are not a victim pleading your case. You are the beneficiary of a verdict already decided in your favor before the first lie was ever spoken against you. Right now, angels are executing judgments while your enemies sleep peacefully, unaware that their own schemes have become their spiritual death sentences. They're living on borrowed time, spending blessing money they don't realize has already been frozen in heaven's accounts. If you know that heaven has ruled in your favor, that every attack against you has already boomeranged back to its sender, that you walk under a protection your enemies can't penetrate and a favor they can't cancel, then declare it right now. Type in the comments, verdict chosen. Because, chosen one, the court case is closed, the evidence has been weighed, the judgment has been rendered, and you are not just vindicated, you are untouchable. But now I need to tell you something that will explain why their attacks aren't just failing, they're actually accelerating your breakthrough in ways that will leave you speechless. Dear chosen one, they've been whispering lies about your age for far too long. They've convinced you that 70 means settling, that 80 means surrendering, that 90 means you should just be grateful to still be breathing. But what if everything they told you about aging was a deception designed to steal your greatest years? You thought age was decline. God calls it qualification. Listen to me carefully. While the world sees your gray hair as evidence of your expiration date, heaven sees it as a crown of glory. Proverbs 16:31 declares, "Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness." Every line on your face tells a story of battles fought and won. Every scar bears witness to a warrior who refused to quit when quitting would have been easier. But here's the shocking truth that will shatter every limitation they've placed on your mind. God's greatest moves often happen when the world expects you to move aside. Moses was 80 years old when God called him to deliver an entire nation. 80. The world would have handed him a gold watch and sent him to pasture. But heaven handed him a staff and said, "Now your real work begins." For 40 years, Moses led 2 million people through impossible terrain, split seas with his voice, and spoke face to face with the Almighty. His greatest achievements didn't happen despite his age, they happened because of it. Sarah was 90 when she birthed nations. 90. Her womb was dead, her body worn, her hope nearly extinguished. But Genesis 21:1 tells us, "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised." God didn't just give her a baby. He gave her the foundation of an eternal covenant. At 90, she became mother to millions. Caleb was 85 when he stood before Joshua and declared, "Give me this mountain, not give me a rocking chair, not give me a quiet corner, give me the giants. Give me the battles the younger men are afraid to fight." At 85, Caleb was claiming territory that would intimidate warriors half his age. Do you see the pattern? Do you understand what heaven is trying to tell you? You are not fading, you are awakening. You are not declining, you are ascending. You are not late, you are right on time. But something has been sleeping inside you, hasn't it? Something that used to roar with unstoppable force, but got caged by disappointment, silenced by betrayal, numbed by years of being told to act your age. The world convinced you that your fire was supposed to dim, that your voice was supposed to soften, that your dreams were supposed to shrink with your retirement account. That was the cage. But cages are not permanent homes for lions. Think about this. Why do you think the enemy worked so hard to convince you that your best days were behind you? Because he knows something you've forgotten. He knows that when a lion finally remembers who it is, when it stops pacing in circles and starts preparing to roar, everything changes. Not just for the lion, for everyone within 100 miles. You've been pacing, haven't you? Walking the same emotional patterns, rehearsing the same limitations, accepting the same small spaces they carved out for your golden years. But deep in your chest, something has been stirring, something ancient, something that remembers when you used to move mountains with your faith, when your prayers could shift the atmosphere, when your very presence commanded respect. That stirring isn't nostalgia, that's awakening. You are not fading, you are awakening. You are not declining, you are ascending. You are not late, you are right on time. The lion has been sleeping, but the cage door was never locked. You've had the key the entire time. And that key is the recognition that God doesn't measure your worth by your age. He measures it by your availability. Moses said, "Here am I, send me at 80. Sarah said, "Nothing is too hard for the Lord at 90. Caleb said, "I am as strong today as I was 40 years ago at 85. What will you say at 70, at 80, at 90? Because this moment right now, as these words penetrate the deepest chambers of your heart, This is your cage door swinging open. This is your invitation to remember that you weren't born to fade quietly into the background. You were born to burn brighter as you draw closer to eternity. The world needs to see what happens when a lion stops sleeping and starts stalking, when a warrior stops resting and starts rising, when someone who has walked with God for decades finally steps into the fullness of their accumulated authority. You are not fading, you are awakening. You are not declining, you are ascending. You are not late, you are right on time. The lion has slept long enough. Now it roars. Can you feel it building in your chest? That sound that's been trapped for too long, that voice that the world tried to silence, that authority they told you expired with your youth. It's rising. It's rumbling. It's about to shake foundations that have stood unchallenged for generations. Type it now. The lion is awake. Don't just read these words, release them. Because when you declare it, you're not just making a statement. You're making a sound that hell will hear, that heaven will honor, and that your family will inherit. The cage is open, chosen one. The question that will determine everything is this: will you step out roaring, or will you keep pacing in circles, convinced that your time has passed? Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to remember 3 eternal truths that will anchor your soul in the storms ahead. First, your presence is not ordinary. It never was, and it never will be. You carry something rare, something precious, something that either elevates or exposes everyone who comes near. The world's attempt to diminish you, to make you feel common, to convince you that your best days are behind you, those are lies designed to keep you small when heaven has called you to be magnificent. Second, your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom. Every wrinkle tells a story of endurance. Every year you've lived has been preparing you for this moment when God says, "Now you're ready for what I've been saving for last." Moses at 80, Sarah at 90, Caleb at 85. They didn't retire from purpose, they graduated into it. Third, being in your presence is indeed a privilege, and those who mishandle it always face consequences. Not because you're vindictive, but because the universe has laws about how sacred things are treated. You don't need to defend yourself or prove your worth. Your very existence is the proof. But hear me clearly, beloved, you are not walking this path alone. Right now, as you listen to these words, the God who called you before time began is still working in your life. He's still opening doors, still arranging divine appointments, still positioning you for purposes you haven't even imagined yet. Romans 8:28 reminds us that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. That includes your pain, your waiting, your seasons of feeling invisible. And beyond God's presence, you have something beautiful right here, this community of fellow chosen ones who understand your journey, who've walked similar paths, who know what it feels like to carry weight the world doesn't recognize. You're not alone in this calling. We see you, we understand you, we stand with you. Let me ask you one final question that will echo in your heart long after this message ends. Now that you know who you really are, now that you understand the privilege of your presence, now that you've heard the lion roar within your chest, what will you do with this truth? Will you shrink back into the shadows of society's expectations, or will you step boldly into the light of your divine assignment? Before you answer that question, join me in prayer. Wherever you are right now, in your living room, your bedroom, your car, I want you to feel the weight of these words as they settle over your spirit like a warm blanket on a cold night. Heavenly Father, I place my hand on the shoulder of every precious soul who has journeyed with us through this message. Lord, you see their hearts. You know their struggles. You feel every tear they've cried in secret, every moment they've questioned their worth, every night they've wondered if their best days were truly behind them. God, I pray that you would breathe fresh life into their weary bones tonight. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are engraved on your palms. Where they feel invisible, Let them see themselves through your eyes. Where they feel finished, show them they are just beginning to understand the depth of their calling. Father, open doors that no man can shut. Bring divine connections that will recognize the privilege of their presence. Give them the courage to step into rooms where their voice is needed, their wisdom is valued, their experience is treasured. Let them feel your pleasure over their lives, not for what they'll accomplish, but for who they already are. Protect them, Lord. Cover them with your wing. Send angels to guard their steps and prepare their way. Let them wake each morning, knowing that this could be the day everything changes, that this could be the moment their lion's roar shakes generations. And God, use this community. Let iron sharpen iron. Let each person here find the support, the prayer, the encouragement they need to keep walking in their divine assignment. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer with faith, hope, and love. Amen. Now, beloved, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us how this message has impacted your heart. What awakened in you today? What lion began to stir? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. If you're ready to stop apologizing for taking up space and start occupying the territory God gave you, type "The lion is awake" in the comments. If you need prayer for a specific situation, share it. This community will surround you with intercession. And if this message touched your soul, please share it with someone who needs to remember that being in their presence is also a privilege. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the sacred chambers of your soul, for being brave enough to consider that maybe you're more powerful than you ever dared to believe. If this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of chosen ones who gather here regularly to be reminded of their worth, their calling, their divine assignment. We're building something beautiful together, a community where age is honored, wisdom is celebrated, and every gray-haired warrior knows they are not forgotten. Until we meet again, walk in the authority of who you are. You are chosen, you are powerful, you are a privilege to be around. And most importantly, you are never, ever alone. The lion is awake, chosen one. Now let it roar.